Drug addicts and prostitutes seem to have fallen so far from grace that even thinking about them is unpleasant. As for loving them, well, that's almost impossible. 5 years ago, 2 Christians took up that challenge, and the house in Hillbrow is the result. For Adele and Jean Duplessis, these are more than lost sheep. They are literally lost children.
The house's main aim is to retrieve runaways off the streets before they become involved with drugs and prostitution. There's a large number of runaways that resort to the streets of Hillbrow, thinking that they can make a better life for themselves, and they obviously don't.
A runaway child, frightened and friendless, is easy prey for the pushers and the pimps. You earn money by selling your body. Drugs will dull the horror of it, and once you are in the trap, it's almost impossible to escape.
When we get new runaways, we try and reconcile with the families. We try and get them back within the family structure, and we keep the runaways for approximately 10 days, trying to find out what the reason was why they ran away from home. Because kids are not naughty when they run away from home. They run away because they have serious problems, and we try and sort that out. A drop-in facility is another facet of the house, and that is where girls that ran away a couple of years ago that are currently involved in prostitution and drugs, they are the girls that we have coming in on a daily basis for a chat, for a cup of coffee, with their problems, and many of them are trying to get out of the life that they're in, but that is a very slow process.
Since there is no judgmental attitude, dropping in for a friendly chat opens the door for counseling. Jean and Adele will tell you that most runaways are girls between 12 and 15 from middle to upper class families. Sandy is one of many girls that followed this pattern.
Well, I started when I was younger, yeah, and then when I ran away from home. I ran away at quite a young age, and then I didn't know really where to go, so I came into Hillbrow, and then I fell pregnant from another guy, and I left my baby with another girl to look after my baby, and then I used to go and walk the streets just like so that I could make money, because I didn't really have clothes at that time and stuff like that. That's how I got involved in it.
It's hard to understand what makes a child run away from a relatively well-off family to risk life on the streets, and all seem to fear being sent home. Adele's explanation was equally shocking.
The majority of these kids run away because of sexual abuse. They cannot deal with the abuse, they cannot deal with the emotional trauma that they go through, and think that they can make a better life. The girls that are on the streets, the profile of the typical girl that are on the streets, are girls that's between the ages of 18 and 22 that have been on the streets 5-6 years already, that have lived a life of prostitution and drug abuse for the past 5-6 years, and for them to get out of it, it is very, very difficult.
Tracy fell into the whirlpool of prostitution to earn a living and drugs to make it bearable. Far from the romantic glamour of movies like Pretty Woman, it's a bitter life with little joy.
By the time you usually find that out, you're usually an addict, or you're so used to the money you make, or you're just into the life. It's another culture.
Like any culture, it has its own terms of reference and its own style of language. Adele and Jean use street slang to make the Bible understandable and relevant to their congregation. The Mary Magdalene of Christ Chapel is non-denominational, and here the streetwise come to know that Christ does not reject them as society does. Bill Dumeris is a doctor of theology and head of Bible and religious studies at Wits University.
I think the primary significance of this chapel is it's reaching a group of people whom the church has forgotten. In other words, the church seems to me, looking at from my perspective as a theologian, that there are certain groups of people who feel comfortable in a church situation, and other people who simply don't fit into the church's understanding of who should be there worshipping. I analyze it as this, that there are big sins and little sins in terms of how the average church person would see it. So that it's quite acceptable to be a tax dodger or somebody who stops streets or exceeds the speed limit and to sit in church on a Sunday. But if you happen to be a prostitute or a drug addict or an alcoholic, then those kind of people just simply are not accepted.
We will always be God's children. It is very important to remember that.
I tried to go, and I felt like, because I knew I was a hooker and men were after me at that time, I mean, I used to pick up guys. I mean, I was scared to go into a normal church, meeting the good people in the church, and like maybe being an influence on them people, like making them go wrong or something. But I did want to believe in God. I did want to become a Christian.
The many repent and be saved attempts at conversion on the streets fail, and Tracy explains why.
We see them, they try to speak us into it, banging their drums or whatever they do. And all the addicts do, I mean, most of the time, by the time, because they work in during the day, that time we usually goofed, we've had it, we smoked our buttons, we've had our shots, whatever. And so we're not really listening to them. The house, here we come, we get to hear about the chapel, we come to the chapel. It's too much Bible pushing. Yeah, we can come if we want to. I understand the sermons, and most of the people that we associate with on a weekly basis, they also come to church here with us. So we're not going into a straight church or, well, I was from the Catholic Church first. It's not like going in there and, you know, well, I'm the only prostitute in the church. God, who's going to forgive my sins for me? So I'm more comfortable here.
The house has been criticized for being too soft on their congregation. Some critics feel that a tough, no-nonsense approach would yield instant results.
There are some churches that would disagree with our approach. We have an open door policy, and that is the kids come in, try and make a better life, succeed for a few weeks, and fall back to the streets again. But the doors remain open all the time. And we get criticized for that because many of the churches out there believe that once you've accepted Jesus in your life, your whole life will change. And granted, it will change, but over a slow period of time. When you look at my kids and they give their hearts to Jesus, they cannot expect their lives to change overnight. They still have a standard 5 or standard 7 education. They have never worked. They still have to deal with multiple rapes, deal with child sexual abuse, deal with drug addiction. They don't wake up tomorrow and life is 100% the way it should be. It's a long, slow process, taking sometimes years before they are a whole person again. So to expect overnight results of our kids is most probably one of the cruelest things to do, because the guilt that they then thereafter are experiencing because they failed you, because they couldn't do it overnight, is 10 times worse than trial and error till they eventually grow out of the subcultures.
Jean's counseling is characterized by gentleness, understanding, and the willingness to take time. Both he and Adele are honor students at Wits, but their theological studies are all in the interests of helping the girls.
Yeah, you can come here and talk about your problems. Like in church, I don't think I could go and say what I wanted to say there. Like, say, I'm a whore and I want to change and all that sort of stuff. Adele and John, they listen to it and they know you're a whore. They'll help you. They've helped me a lot. They said to me, do it gradually. And I don't know any other way before. And now I've been speaking to them. They've helped me a lot. Shucks. They've got me off the streets. I can speak much more open now. Before, when I first came to the house, I was a neurotic.
Despite their successes, the scroll on the wall of the chapel is a bleak reminder of more than 170 friends who have died in the last 5 years. While we were filming, the news came of yet another death.
We went to identify a body at the morgue on Friday. And it's cheeky. I'm sorry. We'll have a service for next week, Sunday.
This is part of the horror of life on the streets.
She was murdered and badly mutilated.
A prostitute cannot go to the police if she is raped or assaulted. And in Cheeky's case, the beating was so severe that her body was unrecognizable. Murder is a fact of life for these girls, but that makes it no easier to cope with. Cheeky was a friend. Archive clips of Cheeky show her full of life, but her words are chilling.
Well, I've been here for years, and the only way I've seen people leave is either ODing or getting killed.
Only two ways out, overdosing or getting killed. Adele and Jean dispense comfort and courage as best they can, but the statistics are horrifying. Last year, 37 people died. That's more than one every 2 weeks. But against this, more than 4,000 people spontaneously visited the house just for coffee and a chat. And without that contact and the loving encouragement the Duplessis give, the number of deaths could well be higher.
It's my worst fear, is to be killed, murdered, and Cheeky was very close to me. I was close to her. She's like my sister, so.
Something very sad that happens to girls that get trapped into prostitution and drug abuse, and is that there's no out. Our kids die on the streets for the simple reason that even if they do want to get out, that there are no systems in place that help them. There's no long-term rehabilitation facilities. We don't have therapy centers for kids that have been sexually abused. They need schooling. They need to readjust into society. And none of those facilities are available. So when the girls are trapped in the life of prostitution and drugs, they most probably will die there. There is no out.
Trying to reach children before they are hooked is one of the main concerns of the house. So Adele constantly keeps an eye on the streets for a new face. Daily contact is part of the credibility of the house in Hillbrow. And yet, survival is a constant battle. While people give generously to many charitable institutions, donations to keep the house running are few.
I think the problem is that maybe it's one of those sins that we don't want to face. Maybe it's one of those being considered as the ultimate sin. And we disagree with that feeling because we believe that Jesus came for everybody, for all sinners, even for the prostitutes and the murderers. And to come and withhold Christ's teaching and his love from kids because they are in the gutters, I think that is a sin.
Dr. Bill Dumeris feels that there are two ways that churches can help with this ongoing battle.
We would like to know there were churches out there who were actually praying for us and for the work that's going on. I think the second way in which the church could become involved is when girls do come off the street. They need a loving and a caring community that will take care of them and help them to make the transition from the streets into the real world. And if the church could help there, that would be brilliant.
Financial assistance would be welcomed too. The house has a bond of 100,000 rand to pay off, and part of their vision for the future is a national database of missing children. Linked to the Missing Persons Bureau and the police nationally, it could help find these children before they are swallowed up by an uncaring city. If you would like more information, you can write the house at the address on your screen, or you can phone the following numbers right now. The code 011, the numbers 642-4358 or 9, or 642-9656.